It's the year 9000. Every day is a decade.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Never fear change. Life is too short for fear. Chase what is desired.
I can do this all day.
Would you mind identifying what you are?
We're the best friends squad. That's what we call ourselves. Sort of like a team.
Welcome to the rodeo. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
This is the way.
I have spoken.
Welcome to the Skippy and Fanny Show Torture Cinema.
Remember the old code of Torture Cinema.
You know what that means, Paul. We're doing a skit.
Someday.
I was not told about this.
I'm Sean.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Paul.
And we're here today for a very special Torture Cinema. And by special, I mean that it is about a film that I suspect we all actually kind of enjoyed, but yet everybody picked over Kazam. So...
I always said listeners, but you know.
I mean, I would ask you guys what's wrong with you, but I mean, kind of thank you, because this was not a bad way to spend a Friday afternoon.
Yep, and Alex was a late addition to this, so Alex is a real trooper by watching a film that I think we all agree is pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, but I am very disappointed in our Patreon subscribers because I put Kazam in that list on purpose, thinking y'all would pick that really ridiculous Shaquille O'Neal as a genie movie, and then you didn't.
Instead of Oscar bait, that was Torture Cinema bait?
That was literally Torture Cinema bait, and nobody took it, and I'm shocked.
I thought I voted for it. Maybe I voted for something else.
Well, you may have voted for it, but like for the first, 18 hours of that poll, everything was on this movie, and I think one other, like Hobgoblin was the other one. Yeah, they all just skipped it. It's bananas. I thought that would be a sure thing, and nope. Apparently Kazam is not the movie that they wanted us to watch. They wanted us to talk about Dragonheart, I think because they thought we were going to not like this, but they're going to be pleasantly surprised because this film is fun. So, I think we need to get into what we're drinking.
Yes.
I think that would be fair.
Yeah.
So, Alex, what are you drinking?
I made myself a large amaretto sour, and by large, I mean it is in a pint glass.
We have seen this pint glass.
Yeah. It is my Thor Ragnarok pint glass, so it is colorful.
Nice.
You are worthy.
I am worthy of this alcohol.
This is your
I fucking earned this alcohol.
I knew it.
It's been a week.
It really has been a week. All right, what about you, Paul? What are you drinking?
My last bottle of Sprecher root beer.
Oh no, the last one? I hope you're savoring it.
I'm going to savor it. I wanted a special occasion, and well, listeners, Torture Cinema is a special occasion. I also have my fourth to last bounty bar, so I'm really treating myself tonight, guys.
Like a queen.
So when he says last bottle of Sprecher root beer, what he means is in the entire country. There are no Sprecher root beers anywhere else. Paul has the last one, and it's too late. You can't do anything about it.
I mean, this is the zombie apocalypse, so, seems about right.
I mean, Tallahassee has his Twinkies. I have my Sprecher root beer.
I just, who would have thought that the thing that was really missing from all the zombie apocalypse movies was a bunch of people denying that a zombie apocalypse was happening.
Fair.
Honestly, I used to complain about zombie movies that deal with zombie apocalypses where people seem oblivious to the fact that they're in a thing that they've seen movies about. And yet now we live in the year 2020, and I realize all of those stories now are totally reasonable.
I mean, the one thing I have to say, if we all survive 2020, and I have faith in us, the beautiful thing that 2020 is going to do for us is now until the end of fucking time, anytime someone complains to a writer about how X character did a thing and it was too stupid to be believable, or X villain did a thing and it was too cartoonishly evil to be believable, we can just sort of pull out the roll of receipts from 2020 and be like, oh, really? Unrealistic, you say?
There's literally a tweet for everything.
Or a press conference. Let's try putting in UV into our bodies and looking into injecting disinfectant, because that does a cleaning of the lungs. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried.
Actually, my new gold standard for like when I want to have like the snidely whiplash mustache twirling villain of public service is the mayor of Las Vegas saying that the entire city of Las Vegas can be a control group.
Did you see the response from the governor?
Yes, and that was
He
also
basically said, I will not allow my own citizens be used as guinea pigs. That's not verbatim, that's me paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said, and it's hilarious, because Anderson Cooper, she says that on Anderson Cooper, right, the mayor of Las Vegas,
yeah.
And watching his facial expression as he's trying desperately to maintain his journalistic composure, and you can just see inside him, he's screaming, because the shit she's saying is fucking out there.
So I just need like a picture of him as a meme, and it'll just say screaming internally.
It is, though.
I mean, like we're actually having that play out in my home state of Colorado as well, because I want to say whoever is in charge of Weld County has basically been saying, like, I don't care what the governor says, we're going to open up the county. And Jared Polis's most recent response was, the fuck you will, paraphrasing it. So we're having fun.
We're having a good old time.
Hey, Sean, what are you drinking, if you even have any of it left?
Yeah, do you have any left?
Well, I got a little bit left. So I am in that phase of the pandemic where I don't really have a lot of good alcohol left.
Oh, so now you're into the bad alcohol.
Well, it's not that I'm drinking bad. I'm just drinking stuff that I probably would have drank like 15 years ago. Well, except I didn't have my first drink at 21. So like 12 years ago. And that is that I am having a rum and coke. And I will just note, though, that my rum is not normal people's rum that you would have with a rum and coke. It is my 8-year Bacardi that I got in Puerto Rico when I was there for NASFIC. I still have leftover 8-year. And so it's a little bit fancy.
I just feel like 8-year rum deserves better than to be put with a Coke, but I don't know what I'd put with it instead. Like, maybe just drink it straight?
I think you have to put it with concentrated sin.
I could see that. Well, and where are you going to get concentrated sin now? Sin City's closed down and the governor won't let the mayor open it and kill all her people.
But Tortuga's still open. You just need to charter a cruise ship there.
Shit.
The tickets are cheap these days.
Ain't that the truth?
All right, well, let's get to actually what this movie is. And I don't recall if we've mentioned what movie, but we are watching the film Dragonheart.
Well, we have watched the film, and now we are talking about it.
Correct, yeah.
Order of operation, Sean.
Yeah. Sorry. Look, I don't word very well, okay? Anyway, we're talking about Dragonheart, a film from 1996 starring Dennis Quaid, Postlethwaite?
Sean Connery, or
Sean
rather Sean Connery's voice.
Yep, his voice. That's true. It's also got David Thewlis, who some people know as Lupin, and other things. He's been in many a thing, playing usually villains and weirdness. He was also in The Island of Dr. Moreau, a film we have yet to cover, but which is Banana Pants. So, all that. But we should actually describe what this movie is about, and who would like to go?
Sure, I can do it.
You can do it? What's this movie?
Yeah.
What's movie, Alex?
So, what this movie is about is, like, in some sort of quasi medieval-esque fantasy kingdom that is approximately England because they know about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. You have Dennis Quaid, who is this knight named Bowen, who wants to go to the old ways like King Arthur did, and he's trying to teach Einan, who is the king's son, about like the old ways of being a knight, etc., etc. And the king is a total fucking douche. So the king, there's like a peasant revolt, and the king's like, let's murder us some peasants, and Einan is like, cool, I want to watch him murder peasants, and Bowen is like, this sucks, but I have to go with you anyway. The king gets killed. Einan is like, I'm gonna pick up his crown and be all excited about being king, and then he gets thrown against something that a sharp part of it hits his chest and basically mortally wounds him, and Bowen is like, no! And takes him home, and Einan's mom is of the Celts and knows all about Arthur and dragons and stuff and knows where a dragon lives, so they go to ask the dragon to heal Einan, and the dragon does this by giving Einan half of his heart, despite the fact that the dragon's like, wow, this kid's kind of a douche, and like his dad. And Bowen's like, no, it's cool, I'll teach him how to be a knight. Or Einan's mom is like, no, it's cool, we'll teach him how to be good, it'll be great. And so Einan gets to live with half of a dragon's heart. Spoiler, Einan is not a good person, and Einan just becomes more and more of an asshole as the movie progresses. He's super gross. And Bowen becomes all bitter and angry and blames the dragon and decides to just hunt down and kill all of the dragons until he finds the last dragon, which just so happens to be the one that gave Einan half of his heart. And the dragon doesn't admit this right away, so instead, he and Bowen, like, go into business together where the dragon attacks villages and Bowen pretends to kill him, and then they get money, and the dragon eats everybody's sheep, and they go away happy. And this goes for a little while until their consciences are pricked by a young lady whose name I have forgotten. She just has red hair, and that's kind of her major character trait. She's feisty. And Einan gets really rapey at her, which is super gross. But she's like, Einan sucks as a king. You have to stop him. And Bowen's like, I don't believe in anything. Blah, 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 blah. And eventually, after some shenanigans, the dragon hauls him off to King Arthur's island, and he has, like, a spiritual experience. And he's like, no, you're right. Einan's totally a douche, and we need to fucking take care of him. And so they start a peasant revolt, they kick the shit out of all of Einan's worthless friends, they discover that, oh, if you hurt Einan, it hurts the dragon, and Einan is fine, but, you know, through the commutative property, if you kill the dragon, that will kill Einan. And, long story short, too late, the dragon nobly cacks it so that Einan will fucking die already.
But he gets to live in the constellation Draco.
Yes, because he has proven his worth as one of the dragons, so his soul ascends to dragon heaven and becomes part of the constellation Draco, and then I fucking cry like a baby for 10 minutes.
Basically.
The movie does hit you in the feels, it's true.
I mean, like, I actually watched this movie when it came out in 1996 when I was 15. I saw it in the theaters. And I did not expect it to be so exactly as I remembered it being, down to the crying like a baby for 10 minutes as beautiful movie music plays. So that was actually very surprising to me, because it has not changed, even though I have.
Nice. So her name is Kara or Kara, by the way.
Kara.
Yeah, played by either Dina or Dinah Meyer. I don't recall.
From Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah.
I thought
and she's
she
also
looked
in
familiar.
Starship Troopers, and she plays Dizzy.
Yep.
Which great, really fun. Gets to hook up with Johnny Rico, which is nice, and then gets unceremoniously murdered by a bug monster. So, as you do.
Her last words being, at least I got to have you, as I recall, which felt really cringy at every time I saw it.
But, everybody wants a Johnny Rico.
I mean, it's okay that I'm going to get horribly murdered by a bug. At least I gotta have your dick before it happens. Yeah, it doesn't really work for me. Anyway, Dragonheart.
Yeah, this does have a pretty interesting cast of fun guys, like Dennis Quaid, David Thewlis, Pete Postlethwaite. You have Jason Isaacs really pulling off a lord of questionable merit. And you have Brian Thompson, who plays a character that also doesn't get a last name. He's just named Brock, which I find amusing.
He's like a football player, but in medieval not England. And
basically, yeah. He is known for, in film, X-Files as one of the alien ooze guys, and also Mortal Kombat, specifically Mortal Kombat 2, because he plays, I can't remember what character he plays in Mortal Kombat 2, but he's like the big bad in that. He also got murdered by Arnold Schwarzenegger, or basically beat up by Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, because he was one of the punks.
Oh.
Fun
facts.
I have lots of fun facts for today, so I'm just letting you all know. So, in order for us to get into this, we need to actually do our likes and dislikes, and given that this is a film that we all have lots of feels about, I am going to suggest that we start with dislikes, following in the rare tradition of flipping things over. We'll start with dislikes and then end with likes. So, with that in mind, Alex, what is your first like?
Dislike.
You mean dislike?
Dislike. Sorry, I don't remember. Where are we? What's happening?
I can't even tell you what year it is, so good fucking luck.
It's the year 9000. Every day is a decade.
So, I am having a really hard time coming up with a dislike, other than, okay, I'll go with a sort of broad dislike of, for all that the movie makes me cry like a baby for the last 10 minutes, I really dislike that Draco has to go the full Jesus and sacrifice himself when he's like literally the last dragon. And so I was so excited to see this movie when I was 15 because I had a subscription to Realms of Fantasy and they had all this shit in that magazine about Dragonheart and a movie with a dragon. And I mean, honestly, even now the CGI does not look bad. So it was fucking amazing when I saw it. And then I remember even then I was super mad. I feel like I got hit with a bait and switch where they were like, it's a cool movie about a dragon, and then the dragon fucking dies at the end. And I still don't like that.
Betrayed!
Yeah, I feel very betrayed by it. And then I do also have to note that after I finished, like when I was queuing up the movie on Netflix, I noticed there have been like 3 or 4 other Dragonheart movies that have been made since 1996.
Yep. You can get a box set right now.
I have questions.
What are these? I didn't notice that. What are these other movies? Like, what?
Well, I mean, especially considering one of them is called Dragonheart Vengeance, but my brain keeps reading it as Dragonheart with a Vengeance. Like, too dragon, too hard. But I was also just looking at this and going, isn't this ending that made me so mad because I felt so betrayed? Doesn't that kind of preclude the idea of there being sequels if Draco was the last dragon?
I'm looking on Wikipedia now, God help us. So this Dragonheart A New Beginning is the sequel, and they find it at Dragon Egg.
Yeah.
So I actually watched the first 5 minutes before Karina got home of the second Dragonheart movie, which is like a guy who's supposed to be old Dennis Quaid, which is totally not, going to Draco's lair and finding an egg, which just proves that dragons reproduce by parthenogenesis, which is an interesting thing.
They're asexual,
Yep,
and they were reproduced by parthenogenesis, so they probably should have they/them pronouns.
Exactly. So I stand a non-binary dragon queen.
Except the dragon does refer to one dragon as she.
Well, okay, so maybe some dragons are gendered and other dragons are not. Then maybe there's multiple genders.
Well, and they can have any gender they want and still reproduce with parthenogenesis. I mean, biology's fucked up and weird. So what I'm getting is that we're slowly transforming my dislike into kind of a like because it's about how dragons can actually have offspring without ever fucking. So now we have to ask this major philosophical question about like, but do dragons fuck? And I don't know if that gets answered in any of the later movies.
It certainly isn't answered in this one. There is nowhere in this movie that makes it clear that they reproduce by what we would consider to be traditional biological means.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
I don't even remember, do they refer to Draco as male?
Well, I mean, the humans do, like, they call him my lord and all that. I don't know if Draco ever refers to himself as male.
That's true, because he's like, my name is like...
He might just be making assumptions.
That's my name, and they're like, you can't say it in English, and he's like, well, shit.
No, but he never actually gets to say it because he starts to, and then he has the heart palpitation, so we never actually get to hear his name in Draconic.
I just did his name in Draconic.
In the film.
Yeah, like his name in the film is the equivalent of Castle Arg for Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Look, I have spent 6 years studying Draconic, so I just did it for you, and I just feel like you guys are rejecting my hard work.
But you studied Low Draconic, not Old High Draconic. You learned the wrong version.
How dare you? I study with Lord Bumbleputz for 6 years, learning High Draconic. Thank you.
Low Draconic, Sean. You learned the wrong version of Draconic. I'm not taking you on our D&D quest.
And by the way, your accent was just not great, but keep working on it.
Look, it's hard to have a good Draconic accent, but to get the words right, That's like the number one thing, because if you don't get the words right, it doesn't even matter how your accent is, you'll just basically be insulting dragons. And that's how, like, the last major war happened. You all saw Reign of Fire.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a whole other different movie that is actively terrible.
I submit it's in this universe.
Oh, well, yeah.
No.
Oh.
Okay, alright.
Are we just assuming in Reign of Fire the dragons are officially too angry to talk?
Yeah.
They're just like, we could talk English, but fuck you people, we're done.
It would make sense. I mean, they have to deal with Matthew McConaughey, wouldn't you be pissed?
And Christian Bale.
And Christian Bale, yes.
Oh, good times. And Gerard Butler.
Oh, I forgot he was in that. Yes, so like, no wonder the dragons don't want to say a word.
Anyway, does that count as a good enough dislike for purposes of this podcast?
That is acceptable, Alex. It has been approved by
Excellent.
the Torture Cinema committee.
Shit, I'm out of alcohol.
Oh, no.
Well, let's jump over to Paul. Paul, what about you? What's your one dislike?
You already know my dislike because I watched this with you and Jen.
Oh, it's the Killjoy one where you just ruin everybody's happiness.
I'm gonna ruin everybody's happiness. I'm annoyed that this movie wants to have it 6 weeks from Sunday as far as where this movie is set.
That's fair.
As you said, Alex, it seems like it's a quasi-fantasy Britain, but it's supposed to be our Earth because they prominently have 984 AD at one point on the screen. So like, okay, so it's our Earth, but then we have dragons. We have this nameless kingdom whose politics really don't represent or reflect any 10th century polity that I've ever heard of, especially as far as laws of inheritance and succession. And it's like, so the king dies, and the kid picks up the crown, and that makes him king. With all those other nobles around, you're telling me one of those nobles just wouldn't have off the kid and become king? Like, what? This is not Earth politics of the 10th century AD or any Earth politics that we know of. And then it gets even better. So they talk about Arthur. No, we have Avalon. They mention the Romans at one point. So okay, so they're pulling back to our thing, and then they talk about the scholar's speech. And it's like, it's not a scholar's speech. It's Latin, you idiots. Latin. You don't call it this. So you can't. So just make a decision. Yeah. It's either Earth or it's not Earth. Don't put one in one bucket and one in the other and make it a muddled mess of world building that makes my world building meter go flinging off a cliff. It's like, make a decision and stick with it. It's either Earth, in which case it's probably a one of the Saxon kingdoms before the Norman invasion, which is fine, or it's a fantasy Earth, and you don't use 984 AD. You don't call the Romans something else, and forget the Arthur crap. Make a choice. Don't sit in the middle.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, if it's a Saxon kingdom, like, the technology is just all wrong.
Yes, I didn't even get into the whole, like, what is going on with the technology of this kingdom. Oh, God. It's like, no, please. This is not how the quote-unquote Dark Ages worked. Not at all.
Yeah.
But I know too much history.
I don't know what to tell you, Paul. When I watched this, I felt like I learned a lot.
Well, if you learned anything about politics and history and technology, you learned the wrong thing. And where the heck are those dragon hunters supposed to be from?
They're Slovakian.
What?
They're Slovakian. This film was made in Slovakia, so they're Slovakian. They're time travelers.
Yeah, no.
I also, it was kind of weird to have, like, basically a guy who's supposed to be, like, I guess, a Christian monk, kind of. But I don't think anyone else was Christian, so it was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that staff that looks like has a cross on top. He's tonsured. He acts like he's a monk, and he's called a monk, but yeah, it's like...
His name's Gilbert of Glockenspur.
Gilbert of Glockenspur, yes, Pete Postlewaite.
Absolutely fucking great.
I mean, he was delightful. It was just incoherent.
So the world building of this movie was not coherent to me, and it annoyed me every time I thought about it. I had to think more about the dragon and everything else, and stop thinking about 984 AD. What's so William the Bastard's going to be born soon in this world? Wait, what? No. Anyway, so that's my dislike. So it's a real solid dislike.
That is.
So Sean, you have to come up with dislike now.
Honestly, it's really easy for me to come up with a dislike. And that dislike is Paul's dislike, which is really more about Paul, which is that Paul ruined my love of this movie while we watched it. Because he kept going like, that's not realistic. And I'm like, Paul, it's a fucking dragon. Dragons don't exist. It's a magic dragon that can cut its own heart out with its fucking index finger and put that heart in someone else. And then like by fucking magic, that heart like fuses with the human heart and it just works. Like there's no point in this movie for me that at any point I was like, oh, this is totally a realistic, accurate portrayal of reality. No, it's a fucking dragon who turns into a star and like goes and has like a fucking orgy in the sky with his other dragon friends after he dies.
And I'm cool with all that, but it doesn't happen on 984 AD Earth.
Have you considered that this is not real 984 AD Earth? Maybe this is the other 984 AD Earth that has fucking dragons.
No, you don't do it that way.
Why not? Maybe in this version, everything that you don't like about it is totally accurate in this universe.
Okay, so could they at least have given this piss-poor kingdom a name? No, they couldn't even bother to give this kingdom a name. This kingdom that we have this idiotic social system, so that we have a peasants' rebellion. And
yeah, against an evil king.
Yeah, right. So I'm still trying to figure out the goals of that rebellion besides killing the king. Okay, so they kill the king and then try to fight the nobles, and then of course the son takes the crown and becomes king because none of those psychopaths he has around the king are going to take the crown. It's like, in what universe does Boris doesn't say, okay, I'm king. Heck with you, Einan. You're just a 15-year-old brat. I'm king now. Suck it. Well, I mean, why doesn't one of those nobles around him just grab the crown and say the king?
I mean, I was always very confused as to why Brock didn't just shank him, because that seemed like the kind of thing Brock
you know why?
would do.
Yes, he would.
I got an answer for you.
Why?
It's really simple.
Why?
Because under Einan, Brock gets to do whatever the fuck he wants, but he doesn't become the prime target for assassination attempts. He's a smart man. He's sitting around going like, I like torture because I am loud and I talk like this. And then he just like fucking stabs people and like spanks people with swords and stuff. And then he's like, Einan made me do it. And then they're like, oh shit, that fucking Einan guy totally made him do it. And Brock's like, I made him listen.
I don't give Brock enough intelligence to come up with that. Like,
that's because you judge people by the way that they look, Paul. Just because he has more muscles than all three of us combined, and he can bench press 500 people, doesn't mean that he doesn't have brains.
I mean, the noble that is squeezing the peasants for taxes.
Oh, Jason Isaac, yeah.
Well, I could see him wanting a figurehead to do the brutality and let Einan be king. He can just make all his money. He's playing Jeffrey in Lion and Winter, and that's fine. But Brock, I can't see why Brock didn't shank Einan the moment that the king dies. Like,
because he gets to do all of what he wants to do, and he just doesn't have to deal with any of the responsibility.
But he has to listen to a 15-year-old twerp. No, I don't buy what we've given to the character. Like, why? It's like, why do you have to submit yourself to a twerp that could have you killed anytime he wants because he's a psychopath?
But he doesn't.
No,
he only does that to peasants.
He's proven he has no compunctions about doing anything to anyone.
It's not shown in the film, though. The only people he actually punishes are peasants. And I guess Bowen, technically, because he's got a hard-on for Bowen or whatever, but yeah.
And Bowen, so no.
Yeah, but he doesn't actually punish any. He yells at them.
If I ran my Crusader 2 Kings Kingdom as badly as Einan does his, the game would be over in 5 years.
I mean, I'm just going to point out, Paul, that, like, I get that you think that this system is stupid, but feudalism is all stupid, so...
But it's not even realistic.
It's not real feudalism.
Who cares? It's a fucking dragon movie. It's a dragon played by Sean Connery.
You know what? Okay, I'm going to cut this off now, and I'm going to say, stop, you're both right.
Okay.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
sorry, I've scrolled through enough of my Twitter while you guys were arguing. I'm cutting you off.
Arguing about this
God,
dumb
okay.
movie.
I feel bad.
Do not ever feel bad. You guys were having fun. I just felt like it was starting to kind of circle back in on itself and eat its own tail.
Oh no, it 100% it's circled because literally it just comes back to it's a fucking dragon movie.
It's like you say
Played
it's a
by
dragon
Sean
movie,
Connery.
and then Paul says yes, but it's a stupid dragon movie, and then you're both correct.
And I don't care because I like it. Okay, but piece of trivia. So fun fact, apparently this was in the early days before they were really using mocap. So they took something like 200 photos of Sean Connery's face with a variety of facial expressions so that they could make Draco appear to have more of a resemblance to the actor who played him.
Huh.
Fun fact.
Which might explain why, Alex, when you'd said earlier that the CG, obviously it's aged, but it's not terrible
No,
for
it's not
1996. It actually is pretty solid. It kind of holds up in a lot of ways.
I mean, I'm not going to claim in any way that I think it looks like Sean Connery under that dragon face, but okay.
No, not at all. But it is, I thought it was very interesting watching this, and I don't know if this is anyone's like, but Sean Connery's voice, like, it's very integrated into the character, which I really appreciated about this film.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, you believe it. You actually, like, you're sitting there and go, oh yeah, he's definitely talking to an actual dragon, not just like a tennis ball. Like, yeah, he's talking to a dude played by Sean Connery. Well, anyway, let's go to likes. Alex, what about you? What's your only like?
So I'm going to take the low-hanging like fruit, which is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is fucking amazing. It is the first movie soundtrack I ever owned. It has been used in trailers for so many other movies because it's so good. It's like, if you have not watched this movie, all you have to do is watch like the first 5 minutes and you will instantly recognize that you have heard this music before from watching movie trailers. So the only complaint that I can have is it does kind of have moments like remember back when we were talking about Waterworld where like the soundtrack is fucking amazing, but occasionally you're like, I'm not sure why this is doing this while what's going on screen is going on screen. There is like the occasional mismatch going on in this movie versus the soundtrack versus what's going on, and you're like, this is way too happy for what's happening right now. Like, I feel like the soundtrack is never quite sure if it's like a fun, exciting, happy adventure that Dennis Quaid is murdering dragons or a bad thing. I would lean on bad thing, but no one asked me. But, I mean, just as like a piece of work of itself, just even if you never want to watch this movie, just get the soundtrack. The soundtrack's so good. It's perfect writing music. It's beautiful and wonderful. I know there's at least one marching band show of it, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
And the music has been used in many, 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 many things.
Oh, yeah.
It was done at the 1997 Oscars as a special projection thing that they did with it. It was at the 2004 Olympics. It's been used in dozens of movie trailers. Like, this music is pretty solid. Just saying.
No arguments.
Sweet. I got the easy like.
You did get the easy like.
I mean, if you hadn't let me go first, I do have a backup like, so. Oh,
is it the fact that the bit with Pete Postlethwaite where he accidentally touches Kara's breasts, it says, I'm so sorry, my child, that was totally ad-libbed because it wasn't intentional?
Oh, I did not know that. No, I was mostly going to just say... No, I'll tell you what my backup like is if neither of you guys grab it.
Go for it. Oh, what is it?
Oh, I was going to say, Dennis Quaid chewing on the scenery. He is having so much fun.
That's interesting, because that's not who I would say is having the most fun.
I didn't say he was having the most fun. I'm just saying he's obviously having a good time because he is just fucking gnawing on the scenery at times in like Dennis Quaid fashion, because that's kind of how he rolls.
So I'm just going to roll this into my like thing. Can we just do mine as this then? Because it's related, which is that, like, okay, I agree. Dennis Quaid certainly looks like he's having a lot of fun in this. And he did get to train with a guy who did some of the choreography on, like, Conan and Red Sonja and Dune and stuff to, like, I guess the way that they describe it in the trivia is to bring some orient into the fight choreography, which is a very strange phrasing.
Ooh.
Problematic, I would say.
That's a yikes.
I think that's what they meant is like we just wanted him to bring in some Japanese sword fighting style, which I think that is what they meant to say, and they could have just fucking said that instead of saying we want to bring the Orient into the sword fighting, but whatever. But like, yeah, I agree that he's clearly having fun, but I also think that like a lot of people on this script are having a lot of fun in a way that I think major actors often don't have fun when they're sort of roped into these kinds of movies. So like Sean Connery, 100%, you can tell from his voice, he is having a blast getting to like voice this character. He's just like gets these cool little lines. Like there's the bit when like Bowen's inside his mouth with his sword up the roof of his mouth, and he like literally has to like talk like he's playing Chubby Bunny with like fucking marshmallows up in his mouth. And you can just tell he's just totally into it. He's having a blast. Pete Postlethwaite is just hamming it up.
Yes.
Absolutely loving every moment he gets to just like spout like made up poetry lines and like all of this stuff. And he's just chewing it. The bit about like where he accidentally touches Dinah Meyer's breasts, like that was not intentional. That was like an accident. And he just like rolled with the scenery because like, of course a priest would like be uncomfortable with the fact that he accidentally touched the woman's breasts. And so he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then like they just kept it in because it totally works in the scene with the character. There's just this like all throughout this are people who are clearly having a good time making a movie. And that's something that I think we'd said when we did the Wild Wild West. Like, we liked the fact that there are people who are clearly having a really good time, and it really showed because it improves the performance and it makes it very believable in a way that I think sometimes films that have like CG characters and like lots of fantasy elements sometimes fail at. And this one is a great example. And part of that is like from the Jim Henson Creature Shop because there were some like physical animatronic full-size dragon heads that were used, animatronic
cool.
dragon puppet, all kinds of cool stuff. They like had to move out of like London or whatever to do it because the one they had in London wasn't big enough for the head. Apparently, it's a fucking big head. So like, there's like a lot of really good like combination of CG and like practical effects, which I loved. All the bits with the dragon like hitting stuff and things popping and blowing up and things, and they just like really did a good job. It just like feels very lived in. And I love that because I can just get immersed. I don't have to think about the fact that I'm watching a fucking movie where Sean Connery's like, you know, voicing a giant dragon. Like it's the opposite of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen where I'm just like constantly aware of who I'm watching. This I'm just not. Like I just get lost in like, oh, it's just Draco. And I love it. It's just so much fun to watch. And I think that's why we're all in kind of agreement. This movie is pretty solid.
I concur.
So that's what I've got. Also, I just like the cast in this is so beautiful.
I don't know. Iden is weird looking.
Well, I don't mean beautiful like physically beautiful.
Okay.
I mean, he's meant to be weird looking. They like play up his like creepiness factor. And let's be clear, he is super sexual assaulty.
Oh yeah, no, he it's very rapey in there. I was just like, ooh, I forgot how. Yikes.
This is meant to be a kid's film. It is something that probably should have come up in our dislikes, which is that there is a pretty explicit scene where he's obviously like, it doesn't go super far in terms of the visual component, but it's very obvious what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I would have pulled back on that part. I would have like cut back.
I don't know.
Like if you need to have this in here, maybe we could just have it just enough that he's creepy and we could just leave it at that. I don't know if I need him to like almost straight up basically like take advantage. Yeah.
Like honestly, I felt like it was appropriate for the character. And it was not played to be sexy, which is normally
It's
my
not.
objection when you get scenes like that is it's obviously like it's assaulty, but it's in like this really weird male gazy way where she's like, you know, like the lady's still sexy, but in this it just was super not sexy. It was like, oh god, this is horrible and creepy, and it is mercifully brief.
Yeah.
I do like that. I don't know if this is Paul's like, but I do like that the actress they got for Kara, they basically cast her because they wanted somebody who could like wield a Viking axe and look believable, which I think is really cool because they gave, even though she doesn't get a great arc in the story, they do give quite a lot for her to work with in terms of like, she gets to be kind of ferocious and pretty strong, which I think is really, really kind of nice. She's not just like a maiden. She gets to like throw axes and
Oh yeah.
She's not a damsel in distress. No, she has goals, plans, and acts on them.
And she fights Brock.
Yeah.
A dude that's like 937 pounds of muscle heavier than her.
Oh yeah, and then he's like super mad that he got killed by a girl, which just made my little heart go pitter pat. Like,
I giggled so much because I was like, oh, he's going to say it. He's like, killed by a girl.
that tells you everything you need to know about Brock.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's something else I kind of want to squee about, but before I do that, I want to know what Paul's like is, because I want to make sure I'm not going to steal his like.
Yeah, please, Paul.
Well, actually, between the two of you, you stole just about all my likes. So.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
I mean, you guys mentioned Dennis Quaid. You mentioned Beats Pulseweight. You mentioned Kara. You mentioned the scam. It's like I'm not sure I have anything left. Hold on.
We didn't talk about the scam all that much as a like. Yeah.
I was gonna say the scam was mentioned in the story summary, not as a like. It's safe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, okay. So that one is safe.
You mean that the scam based on Skin Game?
Wait, what?
On what?
So the scam that's the premise in this was taken basically from a movie called Skin Game, which has got Robert Wagner and Lou Gossett Jr. as a film that my grandma really liked, and which is why I'm very familiar with it. And Skin Game, the basic premise is it's set in I can't remember exactly what year, but certainly before the Civil War. And it deals with a white man, and obviously Lou Gossett Jr. is a black man. And the premise of it is that they basically are working in league where he is returning quote-unquote slaves who have escaped, and then getting his reward money because he's basically fulfilling bounties. And then obviously his friend is in on it, and so that he escapes, and then they run, and things go horribly wrong because they start getting caught and all that kind of stuff. And that's the basic premise. It's the same premise of this film, which is basic premise, which is, he's killing his friend, but he's not really killing his friend. He's just duping everybody, and then eventually they get caught and things go horribly wrong. This is funnier, I think, than Skin Game because it doesn't have the, dragons are real. The Skin Game has a little bit more of that, and it doesn't really work because it's kind of a little bit more offensive.
This one is the dragon comes up with the idea, which is fun to begin with, and then right at the beginning, and then goes bad when he lands in the lake that is too shallow.
On his face.
It's like he's like I can't
sink.
And the guys that are there are like meat.
Yeah, that was a little weird. And then they start saying meat to Kara and Bowen. It's like, oh, you guys cannibals? What? You got pigs, and we saw a rack of drying Norwegian fish. Just messes up the world building more because that's a Norwegian Viking thing, not an English thing. Unless we're in the Danelaw, but we're not. But never mind. I already discussed that dislike. Never mind.
I was very confused by the meat thing because I was like, it looks like you guys have plenty to eat. I'm so confused, but okay.
They're so hungry, Alex. They're so hungry.
But anyway, the idea of a dragon and a George teaming up to scam people, and they're doing it just basically to poke at Einan. It's a delightful idea. I didn't realize this was based on a movie called Skin Game, but I like the idea of the con because it kind of reminds me of The Frighteners.
Oh, how so?
That's the Michael J. Fox movie where he teams up with ghosts and pretends to exorcise them
right.
for money. So yeah.
It's always fun when they can put together that kind of scam. That's fun.
That's fun. So yes, I really enjoyed that. And I did enjoy Dennis Quaid, and I did enjoy Pete Postlethwaite, and I did enjoy Kara. I enjoyed all the stuff you guys... I'm looking at my list like, oh God, I don't have any likes left. The other thing I liked is I could see bones of Skyrim and Dragon Age Inquisition battles with dragons in the set pieces in this movie. It's like, okay, they stole that from here. They stole that from here. So it's close. So clearly the makers of those games had seen this movie and it's like, okay, we could use this for our dragon battles. And they did steal from them. So I appreciate that too.
Nice. I wanted to add, so this is now not stealing your like, I also want to say how amazing Julie Christie is.
Yeah, as the Dowager Mother.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, she's not in that many scenes, but the ones she's in, she just fucking commands. And she got me the first time I watched the movie. She got me when I watched it today, because I'd kind of forgotten that angle where it's like when she gets the dragon hunters for her son. And you have that moment where you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, I thought she liked the dragon and believed in him and all that. And then when you get that reveal where you're like, no, she knows that killing the dragon would kill her son, and she did that with great deliberation, and she just fucking nails that scene where you're like, you can see that it's just like tearing her heart out, but she's like, my duty to the kingdom is more important than my duty as a mother. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, she's so good. Like, there's 2 whole female characters in this movie, and they're both bomb. I mean, they're both so good.
And with this movie passes the Bechdel test.
That's true. It does.
Because the major conversation between each other is about her escaping.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of neat that while there are obviously not a lot of women in this, that a lot of the roles for women, that they're not what we would expect in a lot of torture cinema films, because usually when women are in our films that are on this, they're not really portrayed terribly well. They're like damsels in distress. They get to just like be sex objects and so on. And there's a little bit of complexity here. I mean, obviously there's not a lot of time spent with our female characters, but a bit. We get like a little bit of complexity for them, which I think is nice. And I just think that there's a lot of like really cool acting here. You know, a lot of really interesting actors playing just really good character roles. I mean, Jason Isaacs as Lord Felton is 100% believable as like the sniveling, taxing lord.
A road tax, he says joyfully.
He's so right, the road tax. I'm gonna get him with the road tax.
I did not fucking realize that was Jason Isaacs until you told me, and then I was like, holy shit.
Oh, and just wait, it's ripped Jason Isaacs, because when there's a moment when he doesn't have his shirt on, and that dude has some abs.
Yes, he does.
And he's definitely in very good shape. But what's interesting is they play him as though he's not meant to be physically very fit. He's meant to be kind of a little bit weaselly, and yet he's obviously not. But he plays the sniveling character so well.
And it's just so, like, Jason Isaacs for me is one of those guys where every time you tell me he's been in something, I'm like, holy shit, that was him. Like, he just disappears into things. And for me, like, the thing I always think of, because it's kind of the most memorable thing, mostly because Karina kept reminding me who the fuck he was him as the captain in Star Trek Discovery, as Captain Lorca. So now I see him in anything else, and I'm like, you don't look like Lorca. What's going on? Like, because he just fucking disappears into whatever he's playing.
Yeah, he's very much a chameleon that way.
Yeah, which is,
awesome.
Which is like the opposite of Dennis Quaid, because I swear to God, every time you see him, you're just like, well, that's Dennis Quaid.
Yeah, you can't forget Dennis Quaid. It's Dennis Quaid. And even with like Sean Connery, you know it's Sean Connery. You can't unknow it. But it's certainly the case that like Jason Isaac kind of disappears a bit. Did you know that Kenneth Branagh was originally involved in the production of this film?
What happened? Why wasn't he?
It's unclear. He spent 6 months on development and then he moved on. I don't know exactly why.
Huh.
Moved on. That's a very passive voice.
He was presumably as director in the early stages of production.
Maybe he took a look at the world build and he went, this is fucking dumb.
I'm gonna be Lockhart instead.
Well, no, 96 was
a little early.
No. Yeah, it would have been Much Ado About Nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like Much Ado About Nothing, because Henry V was 1989. So
yeah, it's a little early, but you know, time travel.
Or was that like when did he do his extremely scene chewing Hamlet? Oh, Hamlet was 96 when that came out. It might have been.
Okay, that explains it. He went. Yeah, it's like, let's do Hamlet instead. Okay, I can see that.
All right, we gotta stop. We gotta like actually grade this movie. We've talked long enough, and so we now need to give a grade to Dragonheart from 1996, starring Dennis Quaid. Alex, what are your final thoughts in your grade?
So my final thoughts are: this is one of those rare movies that I watched when I was in high school, and then I didn't watch again until today, and it hasn't changed. No matter how much I've changed, it hasn't changed. It still made me cry. I still liked the parts that I liked before. I think I actually have a greater appreciation for the female characters in it now, because I've at least interrogated some of my internalized sexism at this point. But like, this does not deserve to be a torture cinema movie, y'all. Like, I don't know what the fuck's wrong with you. So, I mean, if we were gonna grade it on, like, you know, our normal cinema scale, like it wasn't torture cinema, the grade would probably be kind of like high C-ish, because it's a fun movie. It's not necessarily a good movie, but I mean, it gets the job done. The script is honestly nice and tight. Like, I feel like if somebody tried to make this movie today, they'd fucking pad it out to like 2.5 hours.
It would
Yeah.
be.
And there would be like so
Without a
much
doubt.
CGI, it would just make my brain hurt. So, I mean,
It wouldn't be as good as the CGI holds up in this movie either.
exactly.
Well, and the dragon fight scenes would be basically indecipherable, because Michael Bay would get a hold of it, and he would just be like fucking dragon fighting a goat.
Well, I mean, if Michael Bay got a hold of it, both the women would just disappear as well, because, whatever.
Nope, not true, because Kara would still be there, but she would bend over a hay bale, and we would spend an inordinate amount of time looking at her belly.
That is true.
Yeah.
So,
That's Michael Bay.
it would be like high C, kind of low B for like normal scale, but since this is torture cinema, and this movie was not torture at all, and I loved it, and I cried for 10 minutes straight, and the soundtrack is still fucking amazing after, oh god, 24 years.
24 years.
Fuck. And this, yeah, so it gets an A. It gets an A+. Like, holy shit.
Well, great. All right. Well, an A+ for Alex, because Alex's scale is going to be different from some others. So appreciate that. Paul, what about you? Your final thoughts and grade?
I didn't realize there were different grading levels for torture cinema
Alex
versus
made that
regular
up.
stuff. Okay.
That's Alex's grading scale. We have no rules about how grading scales work for this, and I just don't have the heart to just set that in stone. So
No, because we love freedom. We're not going to destroy that.
I think you have to grade it when it's a torture cinema on some kind of curve, because otherwise, if you tried to do the entire spectrum from like the good movies we watch on purpose into the torture cinema movies, then like every torture cinema movie that isn't like this one would be like a fucking F double minus. Right?
we can invent new grades. There are other letters in the
I'm
alphabet.
just grading it on a curve, and you can deal with it. You can just imagine me
enough,
like
that's
putting
fine.
sunglasses on over my regular glasses. Anyway, sorry, Paul.
No worries. So a lot of what you said is accurate. I mean, is it a world-changing movie? No. Is it a lot of fun that holds up after 24 years? Yes, yes, it does. I rewatched this once I found out I was going to be on this podcast. I watched it with Sean and Jen last week, because they just wrote me into it. And when Sean said you want to be on the podcast, like, I should look. And unlike a lot of torture cinema or even a lot of movies, you're just like, okay, I can watch this again because I'll have a good time doing that. And by golly, I did. So I'm not going to go out grade on the curve that you have, Alex. But this is not torture cinema. I thank the listeners. If listeners, you wanted to give us a good movie and were just piking us and saying, "Oh, that's not torture," we'll make them watch that and they'll have fun. That I appreciate. If you think this is torture cinema, listeners, you're wrong. So I'm going to give this a nice solid B+.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Totally fair. I think that's totally fair. So I just want to point out that this is, while it is the fault of Torture Cinema listeners on our Patreon page for picking this film out of the options that were given, and again, I am disappointed in all of you that you did not choose Kazam. I literally threw the bait out there, and you all, like every fish I've ever tried to catch, just decided to ignore it. So thanks a lot, jerks. But I will note that our rule generally for how we pick Torture Cinema movies, which is we base it on either IMDb viewer score, that has to be 6.0 or less, under 6.0 is what we mean, or it needs to be under 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's how we choose what gets on our master list. It's really that simple. We don't make an assessment past that point. Because I think the idea is, like, when we made this, that we thought that occasionally you'd run into one where, generally the audiences or whomever thought it was shit, and then it turns out it's not totally shit. And we ran into that not that long ago with Voyage of the Rock Aliens, which is an absolutely delightful musical that apparently everybody thinks is trash, but is weirdly quirky and delightful. And then we got this movie, and on IMDb it's got a 6.5, but on Rotten Tomatoes it's a 50%. And so it is in fact considered by many critics to be a shit film at the 50% mark, because I would argue that...
Well, they're wrong.
They hate freedom.
I agree. They hate freedom. That's what this is about. They hate freedom.
And dragons.
And dragons.
And completely inaccurate technology for a Saxon time period.
Oh.
But we don't sit down and think about, like, we don't interpret. We don't sit there and go, oh, well, that one's not really terrible. Because the idea is, like, this is about what generally people think is terrible. And then most of the time it is, like, a nightmare shitville. We just get some really terrible movies. And it's just been really weird, like, the last month and a half, that in the year 2020 of all years, the year of our Lord 2020, we've just gotten 2 films now that have been surprisingly really delightful. And Dragonheart happens to be one of them. And I agree with both Alex and Paul that, yes, are there flaws? Sure, there's a lot. But for some reason, this film still really holds up. Like, I still tear up at the end when Draco dies and the music comes on and he becomes a Dragon Star person thing.
Oh, you're going to make me hit the feels again. Sean, don't do that.
It does hit the feels. And that's, like, the thing. This is so much feels. When that happens, you're, like, so invested because the performance is so fucking good. You're just, like, really into this character. Like, Draco's a real person and you, like, really, oh, he died. Oh, it's so sad. And Bowen has to kill him. And it's like, fuck, this is so painful. And I love it. And I think that that's part of why I have to give this a really good grade. I don't think this is the best film. I think it's got some flaws that are just silly and ridiculous. But I love this movie. And I give it an A- on my regular person scale.
Wow.
And on a torture scale. It's just good. It's just a fun movie. But Postlethwaite is hilarious, like Gilbert of Glockenspur. He's just so much fun. Everyone's having fun making this movie, and that makes every experience of it so much fun. And if you've never seen it, you should watch this movie and just realize it's a silly movie about a dude and his dragon. That's all you need to know, and it's fucking hilarious.
And we all kind of need that right now.
And so the average is just short of an A, which might be the best torture cinema score we've ever had.
Nope.
Really?
Voyage of the Rock Aliens. Jen and I gave it both an A+.
So this is the second
that
best
holds the
torture
record.
cinema movie grade of all time.
I think it's in good company.
It's in good company, yeah. If you've never seen Voyage of the Rock Aliens, please do immediately. It is delightful. But this film also delightful, so just different.
Very different.
Very different.
So we've done it.
We did it.
We
We've
did
done
it.
We did the thing.
Go, Gaia. Yeah.
The real question is, am I going to sit down and watch all of the other Dragonheart movies just to see what the fuck is going on?
I'm gonna be honest. While they are on our master list, it is not something I am deliberately choosing to do.
Oh, so are they way underperforming versus the original?
They're direct to video.
So
which,
yeah.
while not an automatic guarantee that they will suck, increases the likelihood tenfold. And I say that as somebody who lived through the era when Disney did lots and lots of direct-to-home video sequels to many of their very famous properties from the golden era, including things like, Little Mermaid and, Aladdin, etc., etc.
So there's one of them Patrick Stewart is in.
He's in a Dragonheart movie?
Yeah! He's listed in the cast for one of them. I didn't go to check and see if he's the voice of the dragon or something, but yeah. Maybe it was Dragonheart with a Vengeance. I don't remember which one he's in, but yeah.
Nope, it's not Dragonheart with a Vengeance. It is Dragonheart Battle for the Heartfire, and Patrick Stewart does in fact play the dragon.
Okay, that makes sense. But see, now I kind of have to watch that one just because it's got Patrick Stewart in it.
Patrick Stewart as
kinda
Draco
wanna see it.
voice. Like,
I will give them credit that many of these films have been filmed in Europe. This film was made in Slovakia primarily. The film that Patrick Stewart is in was made primarily in Romania.
so Dragonheart Battle for the Hearthfire is actually a prequel. As far as in the eternal chronology of the Dragonheart verse, God, that sounds like a very strange thing to say, but Dragonheart: A New Beginning is a sequel. Then you have the Sorcerer's Curse, Dragonheart: The Sorcerer's Curse.
So that just sounds like a fucking off-brand Harry Potter movie.
Which actually takes place before the first movie, and then the Dragonheart Battle for the Hearthfire takes place after that one, and then you have Dragonheart Vengeance, which takes place after that one. So it's almost like Planet of the Apes. So
Then you have Dragonheart Tokyo Drift.
Here's the crazy part. Dragonheart Battle for the Heartfire in 2017 was, in fact, on Netflix and did have a theatrical release, small one, because they only had a very, like, $800 and something thousand in box office. But yeah, so this film had a slight release in forms other than straight to home video.
Huh. There you go.
Look, I'm just saying this whole series is obviously silly and it's funny, but this is the world we're living in now, and we're going to take joy where we can get it.
I concur.
we need joy in 2020.
Whew, do we?
Absolutely. And we need to stop talking because every single time the three of us have been on a Torture Cinema, that episode has been 637 hours long, and Jen has refused to edit it and made me do it. And it's
And not to mention the hour we talked before starting this episode. So, listeners, thank you so much for listening to us here on Torture Cinema. Thank you so much for your votes in making the Skiffy and Fantasy Show a Hugo nominee for Best Fancast. Thank you so much for that. Sean and Jen really, really appreciate how you recognized our efforts in trying to give back to the community and being part of the community and with that Hugo nomination, even if we can't go to New Zealand this year because no one's going anywhere this year. We appreciate that.
Yes.
absolutely.
And thank you for listening.
Yeah, and thank you for listening. And as always, you can find us if you want to support the show, patreon.com/SkiffyandFandy if you'd like to support there. We'd appreciate all the support. We also would really love reviews on iTunes and those kinds of places. We have 25, and we're awesome enough that we should have more. So please throw some reviews. We may even be able to read them if you get cutesy with it. But yeah, any review would be really useful. You can also find us at, skiffyandfanny.com and at skiffyandfanny on Twitter, and we're at Facebook/skiffyandfanny on there. And we have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/skiffyandfanny. We're all in all the places. And you can find me at Sean Duke on Twitter or seanduke.net. That's Sean with a U instead of a W. Alex, where can they find you?
They can find me at katsudon.net or on Twitter at katsudonburi, just like the food.
I'm hungry now. And Paul, where can they find you, Mr. Best Fan Writer?
Yeah!
Finalist. I am a finalist of Best Fan Writer. That is true. Thank you, listeners. You can find me on Twitter as Prince Justin, with a V, not with a U, or my website, www.princejustin.com. I write reviews for Skiffy and Fantasy. I write stuff for Tor. You can find my stuff on Nerds of a Feather. I have stuff all over the internet because, I can't just do one thing,
So it's Prince Justin, but spelled as if it's in the scholar's tongue.
As in the scholar's speech,
Correct.
yes.
The scholar's speech.
All right, folks. Well, on that note, we got to close this show out. So I will just remind you that dragons can, upon request, engage in parthenogenesis, but they also do space orgies. And I think that's really important to recognize because they enjoy it. And you should always let them enjoy it.
Important PSA.
So on that note, awkward ending and scene.
Stay safe, citizens. Stay safe.
If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/SkiffyandFanty. You can also find us on our website, skiffyandfanty.com, and on Twitter at skiffyandfanty. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at skiffyandfanty@gmail.com. The music for this episode comes from Sphere by Creo. You can find out more about their music at freemusicarchive.org.